Donald Trump's presidency has fundamentally been about one thing. That is serving Donald Trump, about making Donald Trump as wealthy as possible through the presidency, attacking Donald Trump's political enemies at whatever cost, and of course, allowing him to be the dictator on day one that he promised to be. This is a guy who said he would come in and work for you, and every promise he has made, he has failed to keep because he is too busy serving himself and playing golf. And that last part, Donald Trump's golfing, has not only been embarrassing as he has neglected his duties as president, which honestly, if he was actually doing them, it would be more harmful than helpful to the country, but his golfing has become a bigger problem as of recently because what was just discovered in the House Republicans' budget is causing a huge scandal, not just for Trump, but those Republicans in Congress. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we get into Donald Trump's golfing scandal, I think it is important to bring up a breaking story about a different cabinet official who would rather do something else than their job. That's Kash Patel right here. Kash Patel accused of being spotted more in nightclubs than at his job. According to a former FBI official, Donald Trump's FBI director is not exactly throwing himself wholeheartedly into his new job. During an appearance on MSNBC with Morning Joe, co-host Jonathan Lemire asked former FBI counterintelligence official Frank Figliuzzi how Kash Patel is fitting into the FBI culture after his Trump appointment, and Figliuzzi had little good to say. Frank, let's turn to FBI Director Kash Patel, who has sort of taken a surprisingly backseat role, at least up to this point, in the first 102 or 103 days. Wherever we are right now, Lemire prompted his guest. What do you make of that? That he's just been a little less visible than I think a lot of people, Trump observers especially, expected that he would be. Yeah, well, reportedly, he's been visible at nightclubs far more than he has been on the 7th floor of the Hoover building, Figliuzzi replied. And there are reports that daily briefings to him have been changed from every day to maybe twice weekly. So this is both a blessing and a curse because if he's really trying to run things without the experience, without any experience level, that could be bad. If he's not plugged in, things could be bad. But he's allowing agents to run things, so we don't know where this is going. Now, as was stated in that article, it is both true that this is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that Kash Patel is out of the FBI building, but it's also a curse considering his deputy is Donald Trump fanboy and podcaster Dan Bongino. So not necessarily great, but clearly demonstrating that the meritocracy that we are promised in this administration isn't there. People more focused with having fun than doing their jobs. And what a shock that that is. But it's not just that they're focused on themselves. They're taking funding to make sure they can be focused on themselves. And that is what is exposed by Congressman Dan Goldman in this clip right here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're here today ostensibly to fund the Department of Homeland Security through a partisan reconciliation bill that intentionally and very clearly bypasses any cooperation with Democrats. I want to talk for a minute about what is actually in this bill, which is pretty remarkable. First of all, 2/3 of the funding in this bill goes to the border wall. Now, you can make arguments about the border wall all you want. Obviously, we know it's a pet project of the president. Would it be better if we had a border wall to keep the border safe? Probably. But is it really the most effective use of $46 billion? Of course not. Because not included in here is any funding for the actual effective methods of keeping the border secure. We live in a technological world right now where building a wall where we've seen people scale it very easily, where we've seen it fall down because of the wind, is a relic from the 1950s that should not be what our government is spending $46 billion on. But worse, let's talk about what is not in this bill. There is no money for emergency management for FEMA. Now, this is not a partisan issue. Red districts suffer from natural disasters certainly as much or more as blue districts. And I can assure you, to my Republican colleagues, that when your district gets a flood or a tornado or a hurricane, you are going to be coming to FEMA begging for money. And I don't want to hear a single word from any of my Republican colleagues about where is FEMA when they need emergency management support. Because you are voting for a bill that includes nothing for money that you will need, and you will need it. You are being short-sighted. But do not worry, there is money for FEMA. There is money for FEMA, $300 billion. You know what that's for? For Donald Trump to play golf. $300 million to reimburse local law enforcement for presidential protection related to activities by the president. $300 million. Donald Trump has played golf 24 out of his first 99 days. That is a quarter of the days. So you are funding a bill that does not give any money for natural disasters, that does not repay towns, cities, states for the tremendous amount of money that they have paid out for our immigration system to operate? Nope. And that's red districts too. But we are going to make sure Donald Trump can play golf, because that's where our $300 million of FEMA money should go to. It's a disgrace. And it's a disgrace that none of my Republican colleagues will speak up against this money for golf, against the obvious and egregious due process violations. I know you. I know you are good people. I know you care about due process. You care about the rule of law. And I know in your private moments, when you think about Kilmar Abregu Garcia, and you see that the administration admitted that he was wrongly deported and sent to a prison in El Salvador, that you know that the president should simply correct the mistake. Bring him back home so he can go through the proper court system. When are you going to speak publicly? When are you going to speak out for simple due process, which is the bedrock of our country? Because now it's going from Kilmar Abregu to American citizens, and who knows when it will be next. Donald Trump's not listening to me, but he will listen to you all. And I urge you to speak up for the good of our Constitution.
The gentleman's time has expired. I know.
FEMA funds. Donald Trump is taking FEMA funds to pay for his golfing excursion. FEMA funds. Disaster relief. The same disaster relief that Donald Trump falsely accused Joe Biden and Kamala Harris of withholding from communities affected by natural disasters, he is now using to pay for his golfing trips. And he's not just paying for them, he's paying his own clubs. So Donald Trump is not only enriching himself, but he's also stealing from you and people in their most desperate time of need. If that is not the perfect encapsulation of his presidency, I don't know what is. It is depraved, it is gross, and it only continues to get worse. As we look at the other most depraved part of Donald Trump's administration, his illegal deportation plan, which Congressman Goldman called out right here.
You may say, oh, well, United States citizens aren't detained or deported. False. False. By ICE, that is. They have routinely been falsely detained and held, and in some cases, as we now know, deported as children suffering from stage 4 cancer. So that one's not really going to work very well. Then you may say, I mean, there are always the old reliables like, oh, you know, I haven't read the bill yet. That's a good one. But I urge any one of my Republican colleagues just to stand up and say, I voted no because Donald Trump wanted me to. Because we all know that's the reason why. You have spent 100 days handing over every single ounce of congressional authority that you control to Donald Trump's lawlessness and recklessness. You stay quiet when our Immigration and Customs Enforcement sends masked undercover agents to arrest people in ostensible violation of their student visa requirements because they wrote an op-ed. And let me be very clear, no one disagrees more with that op-ed than I do. But we do not arrest people because they write op-eds that we don't like. We also do not criminally investigate people because they spoke out against the president. I didn't hear anything about the president's executive order directing the Department of Justice to investigate 2 people who worked in his first administration. And what did they do? They disagreed with him. That's how Vladimir Putin operates. That's how dictators operate. That's how kings operate, although kings probably wouldn't even do that. And yet you just all remain quiet. You are a co-equal, and I say you because we all understand you are in the majority, you control what this body does. I can and will write letters to every cabinet official, and I'm quite confident that if it even reaches the secretary, he or she throws it in the trash. We cannot subpoena them. You can introduce legislation. We need you to introduce legislation. And yet you sit silently as the President of the United States defies court orders, denies due process, arrests American citizens, and sends our criminal justice system after people who disagree with him.
I don't think 2 things could more perfectly exemplify the Trump presidency than those. This is disgraceful, this is sad, and this is exactly what we need to spend our time calling out every day: the corruption, the incompetence, and the criminality. We're certainly doing so on this show, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.